Okay, so I'm going to continue now. So that's the main part of what I wanted to read today. The next time I get started, next time we do a video, we're going to read the book of Hosea. Then we're going to read the book of Micah. Then we're going to read the book of Isaiah, which is a long book. So we're not going to get back to the historical narrative for a while. But to finish up for now, I'm going to read the first few verses of 2 Kings 17. I'm not going to read the rest of 2 Kings 17. We'll do that when we get back to the historical narrative later on. And I'm going to skip down today, I'm going to skip into 2 Kings 18 and read the first half or so of 2 Kings 18. This will help set the context for Hosea and Micah and Isaiah. And then whenever we get done with those books, and Hosea and Micah we'll do in a day each. But Isaiah is a 66 chapter long book. We're not going to do that in a day. So it'll be a while before we get back to the historical narrative. But when we do, we're going to resume by reading 2 Kings 17 again. But for now, in order to help with the context for the next couple of prophetic books, I'm going to read this, and then we'll come back to it when we're done with those prophetic books. Okay. So 2 Kings 17, starting in verse 1, reading through the first few verses, not the whole chapter. In the 12th year of Ahaz, king of Judah, Hosea, son of Elah, became king of Israel in Samaria, and he reigned 9 years. Now we read earlier about this guy Pekah reigning for 20 years, and now Hosea reigns for 9 years. Okay, that's about 30 years. From the time that Pekah became king, if it happened in the year that King Uzziah died, we're now getting past the point where the northern kingdom ceases to exist. Uzziah died in 740 BC. The northern kingdom went away into captivity, like for good. We already saw part of it happen, and it ended in 722 BC at the end of the reign of Hosea. That's 18 years. But if you add Pekah's 20 to Hosea's 9 sequentially, that's 29 years. That's way past that point. So there has to be something about the reign of Pekah with his 20 years that we're just not being told. There has to be some kind of a co-regency or even maybe a split kingdom situation that we're just not being told about in 2 Kings 15. At any rate, so the 12th year of Ahaz, king of Judah, Hosea, son of Elah, became king of Israel in Samaria, and he reigned 9 years. He did evil in the eyes of the Lord, but not like the kings of Israel who preceded him. So of all the kings, the one who was probably the least wicked was the very last one. The primary reason for this probably is twofold. He might not have sacrificed to the golden calves because they might not have been there anymore. Yet during the days of Menahem, he gave away a lot of the stuff to Assyria. And in the days of Pekah, Assyria came and captured a good chunk of the land. So they may not have the golden calves anymore. Certainly the one in the north, in Dan, they don't have anymore because that land's already been taken by Assyria. So he may have been better than the previous king simply because of that. And also because in the beginning of Hezekiah's reign, the next king of Judah, Hezekiah had a huge Passover celebration that involved all the land of Israel, including even the north. And Hosea would have still been king at that time. And presumably, unlike the previous northern kings who didn't let his people go down to the south, Hosea did let them go down. So those are probably the two ways in which Hosea was a better king than the ones before him. It doesn't matter, though, okay? We're way too far gone to change our fate now. And he is still evil. He may not have been as evil. He may have had some marginal improvement over the previous guys. But even this guy is still evil. Shalmaneser, king of Assyria, so Tiglath-Pileser is gone and dead. Shalmaneser, king of Assyria, came up to attack Hosea, who had been Shalmaneser's vassal, and had paid him tribute. Okay, so here's the way this works. Back in the days, so Jeroboam dies, his son Zechariah is assassinated within 6 months. That guy who assassinated him is assassinated right away. So then we have a guy named Menahem who stabilizes the country for about 10 years. Menahem had a pro-Assyria policy. He paid off Assyria, he paid off Tiglath-Pileser, he didn't want to fight him. Presumably his son, Hezekiah, who succeeded him for 2 years, also had a pro-Assyria, presumably. Hezekiah was assassinated by Pekah, who, as we made clear, had a very anti-Assyrian policy. Pekah did not want to make peace with Assyria. He did not want to buy off Assyria. So Assyria came in the days of Pekah and took away a large chunk of Israel. Pekah is assassinated by Hosea. Hosea attempts, at first at least, to put back in place another pro-Assyrian policy. Pay off Assyria. Pay him tribute. Don't fight him. That's what he starts out as. But he changes midstream. He changes his mind midway through. So Shalmaneser, king of Assyria, came up to attack Hosea, who had been Shalmaneser's vassal and had paid him tribute. But the king of Assyria discovered that Hosea was a traitor, for he had sent envoys to So, king of Egypt. So some pharaoh named So, or maybe a nickname. I'm not sure if we've identified positively which pharaoh this is. And he no longer paid tribute to the king of Assyria as he had done year by year. So he wants to make an alliance with Egypt now. So if you want to know why Isaiah mentioned Egypt, it's because Egypt is floating around as an alternative to Assyria. These Israelites are going to be torn between, do we try to pay loyalty to Assyria to get them off our backs? Or do we throw our lot in with Egypt? Because Assyria's ultimate goal is to conquer Egypt, and they will do so. Assyria will eventually get Egypt and pretty much completely destroy Egypt. When Assyria is done with Egypt, Egypt will pretty much cease to be an independent nation forever. Bye. Okay. Where was I? So yeah, Assyria will eventually get Egypt. That'll be in the 600s BC. And that'll pretty much be the end of Egypt as an independent power. Egypt has been the dominant power in the world up to this point in time, and it will not be anymore once Assyria is done with it. So Assyria's ultimate goal is to conquer Egypt, and they will eventually accomplish that goal. So in the meantime, this is in the meantime, Israel is being torn between trying to deal with Assyria, which is to its north, and Egypt, trying to look back at Egypt and say, maybe Egypt can help us, which is to its south. Assyria has to go through Israel to get to Egypt. That's part of the reason why Assyria wants to conquer Israel and Judah, is because they want a bridge to Egypt. So it's in the Egyptians' interest to fight against Assyria, and so Hosea knows that, Hosea, and so he was trying to make a deal with Egypt to fight against Assyria. And he no longer paid tribute to the king of Assyria as he had done year by year, and Shalmaneser finds that out. Therefore, Shalmaneser seized him and put him in prison. The king of Assyria invaded the entire land, marched against Samaria, and laid siege to it for 3 years. In the 9th year of Hosea, the king of Assyria... Now, he would have captured Hosea at the end. He didn't capture Hosea first and then fought the kingdom for 3 years. Okay? Hosea's capture would have been at the end of these 3 years. That's just the way it's written. You have to understand that. In the 9th year of Hosea, the king of Assyria captured Samaria and deported the Israelites to Assyria. Now, they'd already conquered a large part of the land in the days before this. And now they've got the rest of it. They got the capital city and all the rest of the land. It's gone. He settled them in Halah and goes in on the Habor River and in the towns of the Medes. We'll read more about it. There's a lot more here. Okay, there's a lengthy section here talking about this. We're going to skip that for now. We'll cover that. We're going to go back to 2 Kings 17 and read forward from there later. Right now we're just kind of helping set the context for the next couple of prophetic books we're going to be reading after this. So let's skip down to 2 Kings 18 and we're going to read the first half or so of this chapter. In the 3rd year of Hosea, son of Elah, king of Israel, Hezekiah, son of Ahaz, king of Judah, began to reign. He was 25 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 29 years. Now, Hezekiah's dates are really confusing. I'm not going to get into that now. Probably the most confusing of all the kings of Judah is figuring out the exact years of Hezekiah's reign. But we'll get into that later. He's around the year 700 BC, though. Okay, we can just identify Hezekiah as being there in the year 700 or so BC. His mother's name was Abijah, daughter of Zechariah. He did what was right in the eyes of the Lord, just as his father David had done. He removed the high places. So we've had a number of pretty good kings come along that have not done evil in the eyes of the Lord, but they didn't get rid of those high places. Hezekiah is going to come along and get rid of those high places. He doesn't even want those around any longer. So he removed the high places, smashed the sacred stones, and cut down the Asherah poles. He broke into pieces the bronze snake Moses had made. Remember that? That goes all the way back to Numbers. They still had that thing. Numbers. This is in the days after of their wilderness wanderings. Numbers 21, starting in verse 4. They traveled from Mount Hor along the route to the Red Sea to go around Edom. But the people, because they weren't allowed passage through Edom, but the people grew impatient on the way. They spoke against God and against Moses and said, "Why have you brought us up out of Egypt to die in the desert? There is no bread, there is no water, and we detest this miserable food." Then the Lord sent venomous snakes among them. That's the man. By the way, the miserable food was the manna they'd eaten every day for 40 years. They were tired of it. They had had enough of the manna. The Lord sent venomous snakes among them, and they bit the people, and many Israelites died. The Lord came to Moses and said, "We sinned when we spoke against the Lord and against you. Pray the Lord will take the snakes away from us." So Moses prayed for the people. The Lord said to Moses, "Make a snake and put it up on a pole. Anyone who is bitten can look at it and live." So Moses made a bronze snake and put it up on a pole. Then when anyone was bitten by a snake and looked at the bronze snake, he lived. So that was in the year 1406 or so BC. Okay, this is now the year in the late 700s BC, around 725 or so BC. Almost 700 years later, they still had that snake. They were never told to keep that snake, but they still had it. Hezekiah finally gets rid of it. It had become a snare for them. He broke into pieces the bronze snake Moses had made. For up to that time, the Israelites had been burning incense, and he's praying, basically. It had been called Nehushtan, which means or sounds like the Hebrew for bronze. Hezekiah trusted in the Lord, the God of Israel. There was no one like him among all the kings of Judah, either before him or after him. We're going to have one more good king after him, but he was one of the best. There's three really great kings of Israel. There's David, there's Hezekiah, and then a guy coming along called Josiah. Those are the cream of the crop there. He held fast to the Lord and did not cease to follow him. He kept the commands the Lord had given Moses. And the Lord was with, this is Jehovah, L-O-R-D, capital Lord, personal name of God, Jehovah. The Lord was with him. He was successful in whatever he undertook. He rebelled against the king of Assyria and did not serve him. So he did not pay him tribute. He took the advice Isaiah had given Ahaz and put his faith in God and not in the king of Assyria. From watchtower to fortified city, he defeated the Philistines as far as Gaza and its territory. Ahaz lost to the Philistines. Hezekiah defeats them. In King Hezekiah's 4th year, which was the 7th year of Hosea, son of Elah, king of Israel, Shalmaneser, king of, this is 725 BC. Shalmaneser, king of Assyria, marched against Samaria and laid siege to it. At the end of 3 years, the Assyrians took it. So Samaria was captured in Hezekiah's 6th year, which was the 9th year of Hosea, king of Israel. The king of Assyria deported Israel to Assyria and settled them in Halah and Gozan on the Habor River and in towns of the Medes. This happened because they had not obeyed the Lord their God, but had violated his covenant, all that Moses, the servant of the Lord, commanded. They neither listened to the commands, nor carried them out. In the 14th year of King Hezekiah, his reign, Sennacherib, no longer Shalmaneser, he's not around very long. Now we have a guy named Sennacherib, king of Assyria, attacked all the fortified cities of Judah and captured them. So this is what we're talking about when Isaiah said that this kingdom of Assyria is going to cause you trouble. It's going to sweep to the country and spread it like the Euphrates River, going up to your neck, and they're going to settle everywhere. This is what he means. It didn't happen in the days of Ahaz. Okay, this fulfillment of the prophecy happened a few years later, the days of Hezekiah, who was a righteous king. So Hezekiah, a righteous king, who Jehovah is with him, but everything he does is having to deal with the consequences of his father's disastrous mistakes. Sometimes that happens. So Sennacherib, king of Assyria, attacked all the fortified cities of Judah and captured them. So Hezekiah, king of Judah, sent this message to the king of Assyria at Lachish: I have done wrong. Withdraw from me, and I will pay you whatever you demand of me. The king of Assyria extracted from Hezekiah, king of Judah, 300 talents of silver and 30 talents of gold. So Hezekiah gave him all the silver that was found in the temple of the Lord and the treasuries of the royal palace. At this time, Hezekiah, king of Judah, stripped off the gold with which he had covered the doors and doorposts of the temple of the Lord and gave it to the king of Assyria. We're going to stop there. We're going to leave that as a cliffhanger. How Hezekiah deals with the threat of Assyria is going to be one of the defining aspects of his reign. He's being put to the test here. All right. His father sinned against the Lord. His father went explicitly against the Lord's instructions and directions. Isaiah told him to his face what he was needed to do and he didn't do it. And then Ahaz went off and kind of basically made war with God. So now Ahaz's son Hezekiah is going to have to deal with this mess that his father essentially left for him to clean up. And so the Hezekiah's reign is going to be defined by how he responds to that. We're going to read about that in the rest of Kings and in Chronicles, as well as in the book of Isaiah. So we're going to leave that alone for now. Next time we do this, we're going to read the book of Hosea, then we're going to read the book of Micah, and then we're going to read the book of Isaiah. And then we're going to finally get back to the Kings and Chronicles again and continue from there. I read this much in order to set the context for these next prophetic books. In order to understand Hosea and Micah and Isaiah, we need to understand the context of the times they were living in. So that's why I did that. And so when we read Hosea and Micah and Isaiah, we'll have a much easier time understanding what they're saying because we're going to know the context in which they're saying it. So that's what we're going to do next time.